Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. My name is Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. In the Pniówek coal mine, the search operation of 7 miners trapped underground after Wednesday's methane explosions was discontinued. It is a difficult decision, but it was made due to the threat to the functioning of miners in the rest of the plant, explains the management board of Jastrzębska Spółka Węglowa. Yesterday evening, there were more explosions. Yesterday's methane outburst stopped the work of mine rescuers, who installed an additional ventilation system enabling access to 7 missing miners. Until now, from 7:40 p.m., rescuers at the base, which has been very far removed from the danger zone, have felt 7 outbursts. We do not know where the oxygen supply comes from, because the increase in methane concentration in this situation should help us. Now the rescue action will consist only in isolating the explosion site in order to minimize the threat to the rest of the plant and the rest of the miners. The situation is being analyzed the entire time. The question of re-entering the most endangered area may be a matter of even several months. At the moment, we have taken steps to stabilize, and I say it very strongly, to stabilize the ventilation situation. Yesterday, there were more explosions during the withdrawal of rescuers. There were 10 rescuers in the danger zone. Fortunately, all of them evacuated on their own. These rescuers were coming out. They were a bit torn by the shockwave. Fortunately, there are no burns. Yesterday, President Andrzej Duda and Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki came to Pawłowice. I feel sorry for those who are in prayer all this time. Remain in prayer and think about their loved ones who are fighting for their lives. And I want to assure you that the state will not leave the families of those who have died or who are extremely harmed without mental or financial assistance. On Wednesday, at midnight in the Pniówek coal mine in Pawłowice, the first explosion and ignition of methane occurred at a depth of 1,000 meters. 42 miners worked there. 2 groups of rescuers joined the action. Then there was another outbreak. The miners who had been brought to the surface were transported to nearby hospitals. 10 injured people, 3 in a serious condition, 4 in a good condition, and 3 people who went home after prior observation at a medical point. In front of the entrance to the mine, candles are lit. People come to pray for the 5 victims of the disaster, as well as for the miners still trapped underground. They address their request to the patron saint of miners, Saint Barbara. It will be here for years. There will be such an altar every year, and it will be practically until the end of this mine's existence. The 58th day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine brought a Russian offensive in Donbass. Up to 25 tactical battalion groups supported by bombers attacked Izium, a city in the eastern part of the country. This is not the end of the tragedy that has been taking place for over 8 weeks. Other innocent people are losing their lives as a result of Russia's military actions in Ukraine. During the morning shelling in the Kharkiv region, 2 people were killed. A fire broke out in a 16-story building. 3 apartments burned down. Rescuers saved 4 people and 1 child. Rescue operations are currently underway in one of Kharkiv's housing estates. We heard something rustling, an explosion, and everything collapsed. 4 floors collapsed. Ceilings and floors, all the debris collapsed into my apartment. The shocking account of the Russian besiege of Mariupol is a picture of the largest humanitarian catastrophe in Europe in years. The aggressors took control of almost the entire city. Therefore, the mayor of Mariupol, Vadim Boychenko, appealed to the residents for full evacuation. There are still 100,000 people in the city who are waiting for evacuation for the 2nd day in a row, and the Russians are supplying us with too few buses. As it was yesterday, they said there would be 90 buses, but only 7 arrived. It is important to understand that the life that is still there is in the hands of only one person, Vladimir Putin. The mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko, informed that Mariupol was a crime committed by the Russian army on a larger scale than Bucha, Irpin, Hostomel, or Borodyanka. Mariupol is a symbol of self-sacrifice and steadfastness of the Ukrainian people. Even if it is damaged, torn to shreds, without electricity, gas and water, food and medicine, Mariupol is a wound in the heart of Ukraine and the entire civilized world, because people who are literally held hostage die of starvation in their cellars and are killed by gunfire. They are taken to filter camps in the territory of the aggressor, and this is happening in the 21st century in the center of Europe. Shots in the back of the head, tied hands, rape of children, torture. These are the cruelties that make Russian soldiers appear on the pages of history as war criminals. Ukrainian investigators discovered 9 burials of victims of Russian aggression in Borodyanka, including a 15-year-old woman with shot-through lungs. As of April 6th alone, 50 bodies have been found. Currently, forensic medical activities are carried out in the city. This is another temporary burial that policemen are investigating. One of our activities is looking for the bodies of people killed by Russian soldiers, their exhumation. We make the first inspection and send it to expert opinions. Today, we excavated 3 bodies at this site. Behind that building, another 6 people, 1 woman and 5 men. They were tortured in the cellars. Some had no eyes. We found 1 man in the field. They shot him in the throat. A friend from my school tried to leave Bucha. She rode with her parents through Hostomel, and they fell under fire. They hurt my father's hand. She was injured in the lungs, and after 2 days in the city hospital, she died. She was only 14 years old. I felt it hard. 2 days later, I went with my grandfather to the garden and saw that they were burying her there, temporarily. Her mother traveled here after about 40 days of war. She fell to her knees. She screamed, "Forgive me." It was her only daughter. As reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, from February 24th, the Russians lost, among others, over 21,000 soldiers, 838 tanks, and 176 aircraft. Since the beginning of Russia's hostilities in Ukraine, Russian soldiers have killed 208 children. The tense situation continues in the Kherson region. It was there that the planned humanitarian corridors could not be used because the Russians broke the agreement. The Russian army did not stop firing and stopped the evacuation column at one of the checkpoints. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki participated in an intergovernmental consultation in Slovakia. The topics included, among others, Russian aggression against Ukraine and energy and economic policy. Today, it is a turning point in the history of Europe, and we must not hide our heads in the sand, said Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki during a joint conference with the head of the Slovak government. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, during the Polish-Slovak consultations, pointed out that in connection with the Russian aggression against Ukraine, solidarity and coherent actions of all European Union countries and members of the North Atlantic Alliance were necessary. As he added, the fight not only for a free Ukraine, but also to maintain the sovereignty of Poland and Slovakia. We have been watching Russia closely for centuries. We know the risk of such a neighbor. Today, unfortunately, in a late manner, Western Europe speaks out with our voice. It sees the gigantic risks flowing from the east. In turn, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Eduard Heger, indicated that further sanctions against Russia were necessary. Both Poland and Slovakia are neighbors, friends who have not turned their backs on Ukraine. We are helping Ukraine very intensively, and we will continue to cooperate in this aid, because we realize how important it is, in the context of our history, for Ukraine to remain a free, democratic country. Yesterday, Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal met, among others, with U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin.
Russia are to create next crises, an energy crisis. We go through this in the winter time. Now they create migration crisis. Now their purpose and the aim is create food crisis in African, Asian, and European countries. So I hope that United States also will take leadership position in this issue in this direction and will support Ukraine and all of the countries.
He announced this morning some expanded sanctions as well as some opportunities to help meet the needs of the Ukrainian people. We have passed, as you know, a $13.6 billion legislation appropriation that is about humanitarian assistance, economic assistance, and military assistance. We want to do more. The president said he will be asking Congress for more.
Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said that the United States Air Force has developed a new Phoenix Ghost drone system that is expected to provide significant support to Ukrainian troops.
This is a drone that had been in development before the invasion, clearly. The Air Force was working this. And in discussions with the Ukrainians, again, about their requirements, we believed that that this particular system would very nicely suit their needs, particularly in eastern Ukraine.
In turn, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said in an interview with Der Spiegel Daily that the government's priority is to avoid a confrontation between NATO and Russia. In this way, he justified the fact that Berlin had not decided to supply Ukraine with heavy weapons. Politicians from the CDU-CSU bloc threatened to submit a request to the Bundestag next week for the supply of heavy weapons to Ukraine if Scholz did not do so by then. In turn, the British Prime Minister assured of another military support for Ukraine.
And at the same time, the extraordinary fortitude and the success of President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people in resisting Russian forces in Kyiv means that I can announce today that we will very shortly, next week, reopen our embassy in Ukraine's capital city.
Yesterday, the United Kingdom imposed sanctions on 26 people and entities from the Russian military sector. In turn, today Australia has sanctioned and banned the country from entering 144 Russian senators, as well as the daughters of Russian President Vladimir Putin and the country's head of diplomacy, Sergei Lavrov. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But from me, it's have a great weekend.